Hawkins, Texas is 100 miles east of Dallas.
High school is the heart of the town. Once you're a Hawk, you're always a Hawk.
Lake Hawkins is a beautiful lake. It was the hangout.
That's kind of where this all started, was out on Lake Hawkins. We had a lot of outsiders that were, from time to time, causing problems.
I mean, it just knocked the breath out of me.
I'm from Texas. Texas girls know about guns.
This was the most feared man, the most hated man in East Texas.
It's just a daze. It's like a blur. From that point on, it was just a summer of dread.
Oh my goodness. So excited for the lake.
Oh, yeah.
You better not push me in again, though.
That was one time.
Last time.
Yeah.
May 4th, 1986, it was a Sunday, and Brian and Gina and Suzanne had gone out to the lake.
The three friends are 19-year-old Brian Boone, 20-year-old Gina Turner, and 18-year-old Suzanne Harrison.
In Texas, it's summer in May, and that's where we hung out in the summertime. You went to Lake Hawkins.
It was not unusual for these three friends to be at Lake Hawkins. What was unusual for them to not come home when they were supposed to be at home at 10 o'clock.
Here in Texas, in a small town like that, somebody always knows where you are. It's hard to imagine life before cell phones, when you were not connected to people all the time. So what you relied on is being at the right place when you said you were gonna be.
I'll get that.
Suzanne's mom calls Gina's parents.
Hello?
Michael, hey, they're not home yet. Where are they?
Well, I'm getting a little bit worried. I haven't heard from Suzanne.
We're a little bit concerned, too, because it's not like Gina to be out this late.
Suzanne and her mom were very close. Suzanne was her only child, and she loved that girl. Suzanne was her life. So her mom was very concerned, very upset. Suzanne was a ray of sunshine. We had fun at school. She went to church with us at First Baptist. She was always very positive, very upbeat. She had a bounce in her step.
She was just kind of everybody's little sister. Everybody looked out for her. You just looked out for Suzanne.
She wanted to be a teacher. All of our group of friends, we were all going to graduate and go off to college.
Her best friend is Gina Turner.
Gina was a really good student. She studied hard. I was very proud of Gina.
Gina had graduated Hawkins High 2 years earlier.
She was valedictorian, which she was very proud of. And the day that she gave her speech, it just touched everyone.
Hey, Suzanne?
Yeah.
Could I borrow your pink top?
Gina and Suzanne were just super friends, always hung out together. That was back in the day when a lot of times you wore the same clothes. They would, have the same shoes or the same shirt. They were just super good. East Texas girls.
Brian Boone is also a recent Hawkins High graduate.
Brian had the craziest sense of humor. He used to crack me up. Brian was just crazy, but he was tough. Hawkins was, every small town in Texas kind of revolves around its football. And Brian played football, and he was certainly good on defense. And yeah, you weren't gonna just run over him. You knew he was there. He was handsome, so the girls liked Brian. Brian was a good friend. He never let me down. He was always there for me. He had my back.
But now, all three seem to have vanished.
But these weren't the kids that would be out looking for trouble. You know, these are kind of all-American kids, you know?
Suzanne was a rule follower, and she knew what time she was supposed to be home.
Gina would have called. We were taught, my mom and dad taught us, you call. Gina did not come home the next day. So on Monday, my dad got on his horse and went to Lake Hawkins. We weren't far from Lake Hawkins. And he took off on horseback to look for Gina, Suzanne, and Brian.
And Brian's older brother, Kendall, went looking for him out at Lake Hawkins. And that's when he found the truck. And that's when he found the purses and the keys in the car. There's nothing you can think about that's gonna make that be good.
The families immediately contact Wood County authorities.
It was very urgent at the time because we knew that something was wrong. Everybody was in a kind of state of panic.
All the county lakes have a county road that goes completely around the lake. And so law enforcement patrolled around the lake.
We have small roads that go everywhere because there's oil drilling wells, which makes it a little more difficult when you have a limited number of personnel to look for those people.
As the search begins, word spreads through town.
My father was the principal here at Hawkins for 30 years. That Monday, my dad came to me second period and asked me where Suzanne was. And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, she's missing.
And Wood County deputies showed up at school. And they were asking us if we had seen Suzanne or heard from Brian and Gina. And then they said, well, we found Brian's car at the lake and Suzanne's purse was in the car.
At the time, I was in Arkansas in college that Monday morning. And a guy says, you're not gonna believe this, dude. Your town is on CNN. There are 3 people missing from your town. I wasn't prepared that it was gonna be my best friend and Gina and Suzanne.
Each passing hour, it's becoming more anxiety-ridden. What is going on? This is not natural. This does not happen in Hawkins, Texas.
Then, at 12:45 p.m. Monday afternoon, a discovery no one wanted to make.
All of a sudden, about 20 miles or so away, in a really remote area called Barnwell Mountain, a road crew working in this area comes across a body in a ditch. We find Hawkins, Texas, in a growing state of panic. 3 of their brightest young people, 18-year-old Suzanne Harrison, 19-year-old Brian Boone, 20-year-old Gina Turner, are missing. And then this road crew sort of randomly comes by, and they find the body in the ditch.
And, of course, they called law enforcement in Upshur County.
6-3 to dispatch. I found a body. Go ahead and start the crime scene unit.
She had suffered a horrendous beating. She was partially naked, and her panties were left around her throat, which at least seemed to suggest from the beginning that she had been sexually assaulted.
Authorities processed the scene, a park area at Barnwell Mountain, 15 miles northeast of Lake Hawkins. The clothing matches that worn by Suzanne Harrison.
You cordon that area off, and then we search that area just grid by grid. The quicker you can get to it, the more evidence you're going to be able to find.
One unsettling detail: a second set of women's shorts and underwear, presumed to be Gina Turner's, found near the body. Investigators believe this body is Suzanne's, but they need to be sure.
Suzanne Harrison was wearing a watch. And they had asked an aunt, would you be able to identify this watch that we have found on this body? And the aunt knew immediately that was Suzanne Harrison, because the aunt had the same watch, the exact same watch.
It was Monday evening, and my mom and I had gone to pick up my shoes for the prom. We got shoes back then to match her dress. And we walked in, and my brother said, Dad called. They found Suzanne. I said, where? Where is she? How is she? What's she's doing? And Don, my brother, said, she's dead. And I couldn't comprehend it or understand it. I mean, it just knocked the breath out of me.
It is full-fledged panic mode now.
They set up a perimeter, and they try to check all roads going out of the community, find out if anybody they stopped on that vehicle had seen anything that was out of place.
Yeah, I did see a Ford Bronco driving pretty crazy around here the other night.
One motorist reports that on the night the trio went missing, he saw a light blue Bronco speeding erratically away from the park. But he did not get the license plate.
That was it.
I just remember driving in that first night, and it was 2 or 3 in the morning. But the first thing that made me realize this was not going to be my normal visit to this town was that the population signs had black ribbons tied around them.
Hawkins lost its innocence that day. We were a community that felt like that we were in a bubble and that nothing could ever happen like that here. And we had to face the fact that it did.
Since Gina and Brian are still missing, authorities have to ask, could they have been involved in Suzanne's murder?
There was never an issue that they were somehow romantically involved with each other. There was never, even from the beginning, this idea that this was some romantic trio that had gone terribly wrong or something.
It means it could have been an outsider.
In the oil business, there were literally thousands and thousands of oil field workers and they came into the East Texas area. Some are trances.
As deputies review files of anything that might be related, they learn about another incident that occurred at Lake Hawkins the same night Suzanne, Gina, and Brian disappeared.
My boyfriend, my would-be husband, Clifton, we were just listening to music, just hanging out at the lake like people do. As it got later, there's somebody who drove by really slow. We made eye contact. I can't explain it, but I felt uncomfortable. He obviously was interested in what we were doing. I was frightened. I was scared. And my instincts told me that we should leave.
He's coming back.
Don't worry about it. It's gonna be fine, okay?
I vividly remember thinking, I'm just not gonna look at him. So I was looking at Cliff. And when I turned to look, it was in my face.
Get out of the car!
I knew it was a .38 steel revolver. I'm a Southern girl. I'm from Texas. Texas girls know about guns. And then I thought, I'm going to die. Today's the last day of my life.
Get out! Okay.
It's hard to get past thinking you're going to die.
Give me your damn money right now, boy. I don't have any, dude. Give me your money. I'm gonna take your damn woman right now. You're not taking my woman.
Then Cliff opens the trunk, and that's when he gets a beer out.
Have a beer, all right? Let's just calm down. Here we go.
I think that he was taken by surprise, that Cliff did not appear to be scared of him. I can't tell you how much time passed. Felt like forever. At some point, the guy put the gun in his waistband. And Cliff mentions that we're going to leave.
Look, her dad's gonna come looking for her, so we're gonna cruise, dude.
It just didn't seem possible to me that we were leaving, because I knew that I was gonna die.
I'll play it.
Yeah. Cliff told me, he said, get the license plate number. That guy's gonna kill somebody tonight.
They got 5 of the 6 numbers, I think, off of the license plate, and they could describe in detail the vehicle.
It was sort of this light blue Ford Bronco.
Really creepy looking dude, tattoos.
And there's a lot of oil field workers in Hawkins, and there's hardworking people, but he just looked more wild.
They observed minute details about all his different tattoos, and his tattoos were very important in identification, especially the tattoo on his chest that said, death before dishonor for the lonesome loser.
Cliff had told this guy that his name was Cliff and asked what his name was, and he said, they call me Animal. He never gave us his name. He just said, they call me Animal.
It has been 1 day since Suzanne Harrison was found slain. Gina Turner and Brian Boone are still missing. Now police have a description and a partial license plate for a man who might be connected.
They were able to run the license plate and vehicle description, and they found that the license plate with those 5 numbers was registered to a Ford Bronco, registered to Mrs. McFadden in Ore City, Texas. They sent somebody to the address, but they did not find anyone there. They had an APB out, and every law enforcement officer in this part of the world was looking for that vehicle.
Then, on May 6th, they see this vehicle. They stop the driver.
Driver, let me see your hands. Put your hands up. Step out of the vehicle. Keep your hands where I can see them. Lift the front of your shirt up and turn around.
And when they got him out, they saw the tattoo that said, "Death before dishonor for the lonesome loser."
His nickname was Animal. His name was Jerry McFadden.
Help you out. Stand up.
At that point in time, they weren't sure this was a murder suspect. But they sure knew they had him for a robbery case.
I ain't done nothing wrong, boy! Nothing!
We ran his criminal history, and we found out that he had been convicted of rape in Denton County in like 1971 and went to prison for that. But then when he got out of prison for that case, he worked in the oil field. He actually gave a statement in reference to robbery where he claimed that he saw Clifton and he thought that he was a guy that he had seen at some bar recently. And so he just stopped to chit-chat and say hello. And when he said this is a robbery, he was just kidding, and that the gun was a toy.
When questioned about Suzanne, Gina, and Brian, McFadden refuses to talk.
He was arrested and charged with aggravated robbery. When they processed the vehicle, they vacuumed it, they checked it for fingerprints and everything else, but they did not find any hairs or fluids or anything from any of our three victims.
What has happened to Brian and what has happened to Gina? Where are they?
Every time the phone rang, every time somebody drove up, you're hoping that they're going to tell you something good, but they didn't. In the meantime, Suzanne's family is planning a funeral, and we still didn't know about Gina and Brian.
4 days after Suzanne's body was discovered, her funeral is held at Hawkins High.
Suzanne's funeral was in the auditorium because there were no buildings or churches that were large enough to hold the amount of people that were going to be in attendance.
The auditorium was packed, absolutely packed. Members of the football team were honorary pallbearers. I just remember we just hugged and we cried. It's high school pride, and we were proud to be Texans. We were Hawkins Hawks. We were family. Whether you were graduated in 1935 or you were about to graduate in 1986, we were a family. And that auditorium was filled with our family.
After the funeral, everyone gets right back to work looking for Gina and Brian.
Law enforcement organized searches, and people were invited to participate.
They were searching at the lake, places all over Wood County. It was on the news every night. Men would finish their jobs for the day, and they would go out and join search teams.
You have to remember that this is a very rural area of East Texas. Tons of forests are all around. So when you're searching this area, you're thrashing through brush. You're sometimes walking in swampy areas, snaky areas.
The whole town helped in some way. If they just said, we're going to pray for y'all today, they did that. We're just a little Hawkins, a little East Texas town. And when your neighbor's in trouble, neighbors come and help. We were horrified about Suzanne, but we were hoping maybe Brian and Gina were still alive. That was the hope the whole week that they were missing. They're still alive. They're still alive.
But 6 days later, they find those two. Their bodies have been dumped in a ditch. They have been shot to death. Any hope, any small lingering hope that somehow they have evaded harm is gone. Everybody has to accept the fact now that there has been a triple murder and things will never be the same again.
They were found together in a ditch along the road from Barnwell Mountain.
And it's a ditch that leads to Ore City. In fact, it's very close to Ore City. And this is a town that Jerry McFadden was living in.
The route was directly on the path between Barnwell Mountain and his house.
Despite the proximity to McFadden's home, authorities discover no physical evidence linking him to the scene.
I remember going through a gamut of emotions after they had found them, after we knew that they had been killed. You go through everything from denial to being angry to, everything.
My dad is a farmer, and he's always had horses, always. And he came home on that horse that day and put that horse up. And he did not ride a horse for 8.5 years.
Gina's funeral was at the church. By the time that rolled around, we were all so tired, just heart-wrenching.
I certainly remember Brian's funeral, and I remember being a pallbearer. Me and his close friends taking our friend the final step of the way. Couldn't stop crying, because I don't think I'd cried up to then, because that really held out hope.
You get through the funerals and you try to get on with life, but then you want the man who did this to be punished.
Forensics examiners compared DNA found on Suzanne Harrison's body to that extracted from McFadden's hair sample.
They were able to get DNA from McFadden off of the samples from Suzanne Harrison.
That DNA connects McFadden to Suzanne's murder. But due to decomposition and the bodies being outside for 6 days, no evidence links him to Gina Turner or Brian Boone. Prosecutors decide to charge Jerry McFadden with capital murder in the death of Suzanne Harrison and keep him in custody until trial.
We were slowly healing. And then all of a sudden the fear's back because he had escaped.
Charged with the murder of Suzanne Harrison and suspected in the deaths of Gina Turner and Brian Boone, Jerry McFadden is held in the Upshur County Jail awaiting trial.
It was July 9th, 1986. I was working the shift of 3 till 11 at the Upshur County Sheriff Department in Gilmer, Texas.
You hear me?
I could see his cell straight down the hall from where I was sitting, and door was just rattling. He wanted out.
Open this up! I need a phone call!
So they called a deputy to let him come out into the hall and to use the telephone.
No weapons were allowed inside the jail area. So when the deputy came up, he locked his gun.
It's about time you up, Miss Boy. I get a phone call. It's about time.
And as they were walking towards me, he had a metal object. McFadden lifted up his right hand. I just said, oh my God. I was terrified. I was really terrified.
You're gonna help me drag him in that cell right now. Come on. Get the gun. Open the safe. Open it.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
And that's when he took me hostage. And he told me to walk towards my car. I started working on myself mentally to be prepared for whatever was to come. He was driving very erratic, very reckless. I was trying to make him just calm down. So I started calling him Jerry. I said, Jerry, I understand. I understand.
Just take it easy, okay, Jerry? Everything's gonna be okay.
I did not do this.
I understand.
When authorities discover the escape, they set up roadblocks throughout Upshur County and begin an intensive manhunt.
It made all the national news as the largest manhunt in the history of the state of Texas.
5,000 townspeople, a team of bloodhounds, and an army of state and federal police are looking for a man that busted out of the Upshur County Jail, taking 24-year-old Rosalie Williams hostage.
When I heard the news of the jail, I could not believe it. This was the most feared man, the most hated man in East Texas. How could this possibly have happened?
Scores of angry, armed Texans join the manhunt.
This is Texas. You understand the history of Texas. You know, Texas, we take care of our own, we do our own thing. You grow up with that. And to come into our community and do this to us, yeah, there were plenty of people who was looking for him.
In East Texas, you get a bunch of men together and they feel like it's their duty to avenge a death, to protect people. They're going to load up their guns and they would not hesitate to use it.
As he was driving, he ran off the road and straight into a tree. And we just run through the woods, seemed like for hours. And then we walked upon an empty boxcar that was parked on the railroad track. He said we was going to go inside.
I swear I'm not a bad person.
He kept saying he doesn't deserve to be treated like a monster or an animal. He said, my nickname is Animal, but I'm not an animal.
It's gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this.
I said, I understand.
I'm gonna go find some water. Stay right there.
Rosalie's level-headed approach works, and McFadden eventually trusts her enough to leave her alone.
That's when I heard this voice, the Lord saying, run. This is your time to make an escape. And I just started running, and it seemed like I just ran for miles. And I ran upon this house, and I just pushed myself onto the door. And I just fell. I can remember him so clearly. He said, don't cry, don't cry. I just saw you on TV. I just saw you on TV. Don't cry, don't cry.
This was about 6:30, and I picked the phone up, one of our local citizens, and he said, we got her. I said, we got what? And he said, that lady that was on TV, the jailer, we've got her at our house. I can't even tell you the thankfulness that came over me and for her. I mean, it's even to this day.
Rosalie Williams is safe, but Jerry McFadden is still out there.
He couldn't get out of there because all the roadblocks, all the radio traffic, all the helicopter traffic, different SWAT teams were looking real close around that area to find him.
They look at any kind of property whatsoever that he might have taken shelter in.
Then a search team approaches one house that's mostly dark.
It is an abandoned house. And somebody sort of notices this shadow move, there's somebody in this house.
After Rosalie Williams escapes being held hostage, authorities descend upon an abandoned house where Jerry McFadden might be hiding.
I asked Collin County, said, I want to get a couple of these SWAT teams out here to go back north and break into the building.
Sheriff's office, step out. Step out now. Step out.
Put the gun down.
Drop the gun.
Put the gun down.
Drop the gun now.
Put the gun down.
Drop it.
Drop the gun.
They told him to throw the gun down, and he did. And he looked pretty beat up, too. So he was probably ready to go back to jail. We were happy to help him get there.
About 50 law enforcement agencies assisted in the intensive search in and around Big Sandy. It was 6 members of the Collin County Sheriff's Office that made the arrest, and a big crowd of local townspeople applauded their efforts.
Once Jerry McFadden is back in the Upshur County Jail, prosecutors have to begin building this case. They are determined they're going to do this right, even if it takes some time. So they spend months and months and months.
Because the DNA evidence only connects him to Suzanne's body, prosecutors and the families agree to go after him for her murder. Although Gina and Brian's deaths will be part of the testimony.
The state appointed a really good man to be the attorney. And he talked to my parents and told them that he was doing this for the kids. He was going to get justice done, and he was going for the death penalty.
The trial begins on March 30th, 1987.
The prosecutors present this case that Jerry McFadden saw Gina Turner, Suzanne Harrison, and Brian Boone having a good time. There appears to be nobody else around. Prosecutors say he thinks to himself, this is likely going to be an easy score. He's a big man, he's got a gun. The sequence of what happens next is a little sketchy.
Somehow, he gets them to the park by Barnwell Mountain, where he rapes and strangles Suzanne.
He takes her to this really remote kind of roadside place. And even if Suzanne Harrison had screamed as loud as she could, nobody's going to hear her.
Perhaps Gina and Brian are bound and held nearby. Although McFadden is never prosecuted for Brian and Gina's murders, authorities believe he is responsible.
He never said anything, never talked, never opened his mouth. His attorney even told me he never opened his mouth the whole time he defended him.
Jerry McFadden is found guilty of the death of Suzanne Harrison, and he's placed in the Texas prison system.
I was pregnant with my third child and battling cancer when he got executed. And I did not go. I did not want to go. My mom and dad went.
It was October the 14th, 1999, 6 o'clock at night. All that was over, he'll never hurt anybody else.
Most people in Texas will tell you, you mark time in a small town by the sports, by the seasons. Now we mark time in this town. Was this before or after the kids? And that's how it's kind of marked in this time. Were you here before or after the kids got murdered?
Everybody did something to help in one way or the other. Everybody came together as a family. This little town wasn't on the map, but we came together. It's neighbors help neighbors, and that's what they did. So now this little town goes on.